Welcome to our 5th developer study group. It's great to be with you all, and I am excited about what we're going to get into this morning. It's an area that it doesn't seem like it's well covered in documentation or anything else online. So, we're going to be getting started here in just a couple of minutes. Well, we're started now, but we'll be diving in just a couple of minutes. So if you haven't already, grab yourself a nice, warm, cold beverage, whatever sounds good to you, and we will dive into some more code, specifically talking about the checkout today. So it's great to see everybody popping in here. Welcome. Come on in. Yes, I've had a good week. It's been absolutely crazy. So we're finishing up the final edits on the art of debugging, and boy, I am so incredibly excited about that. I very much believe that book will transform many developers. It's what is so needed out there, and I am beyond excited that to be able to get this out, and honestly to get into press too. And it's actually going to be a hardcover book that people hold in their hands and are able to read it as well. So we will sell an ebook, but my goal is to make it available to everyone in the world, and there's definitely some logistics involved in that. So we're working through all that because it's not just shipping to the United States. It's shipping to everywhere in the world, including India. And my goal is to offer free shipping everywhere in the world. That is included in the price. So we'll see how that works. But for $40 to purchase the book, free shipping anywhere in the world, there's some logistics involved. But I'm really excited. Really excited about that. All right, well, I see people coming on in. Good. Welcome. Come on in. All right, well, and just as a brief reminder, we talked about this last week, and I've been really stoked to see the reception that this mini course has had, the positive feedback as well. But mastering Xdebug, I knew it was a big deal, but I had no clue it was this big of a deal. Being able to understand what's going on in your code, being a master of using this, it's a fairly easy tool to master, but using Xdebug, it's been phenomenal. So if you haven't already, make sure that you are part of this course, and I hope to be able to add a little bit more information to it as time goes on. But yeah, this has been phenomenal, the reception that we've had, and I really hope that for us as e-commerce developers, it will revolutionize our capacities and our capabilities. So yes, make sure that you've signed up. It's free. That's the cool part about it. It's free. It's honestly, it doesn't take that long to watch through the videos to understand exactly what's going on. But if you don't use Xdebug already, it will revolutionize your career. If you do use Xdebug, I'm sure you'll pick up a number of tricks that will boost your productivity, which ultimately is the best thing of all. All right. So, yes, we will be jumping in, but first, the quick introductions. How are you all doing today? How is your study going? And maybe actually, if you could drop in the comments any questions that you have regarding checkout. Checkout is one of those on the expert developer test that is, it is well covered. Objectives 8 and 9, very well covered there. On the professional developer, previously it was associate, it was somewhat covered. There was a question or two on that, and we're actually gonna dive into that question first, which I think is still quite relevant to the expert to developer conversation. So, and that's kind of where those two merge together. But then we're going to spend the rest of our time focusing on expert developer. And ultimately, you have to think about it. So you might say, Joseph, but why would I want to participate in a conversation for the expert developer if I'm going for the professional developer exam? And just for clarity of mind here, it's hard to have clarity of mind around the renaming of this. Last year, the Magento tests were named associate and professional respectively. Associate was kind of the entry level, that sort of thing, and then the professional developer was the difficult one. But with Adobe being merged into, or Magento being merged into Adobe, those got renamed, and now associate is professional, professional is now expert. So if I trip up on it, that's why, because it is difficult to get those straight sometimes. So it is important to study this because I view professional as the stepping stone into expert. If you have not already, if you have not taken expert, don't start with professional. Well, don't start with expert. Start with professional, then work your way up into expert. Professional is like the final practice test, if you will, in order to take expert. And the cool thing about that is you get an extra certification under your belt. You are additionally certified. So instead of maybe I see some people do 2 tries to get the expert developer, you now have 1 try for a professional, 1 try for expert, and you have 2 certifications. That's a win. Yes, eJazz. That's Simon got it nailed. The tests have not yet been updated. They are still on covering 2.3. So you might be running a little bit of risk in studying for 2.4. I don't think they're really. I'd say the risk is probably less than 2% of getting a question wrong because you've studied 2.4. But yes, that is why, because my goal is that my study materials are in line with the current version of the test. So once Adobe updates the test to 2.4, which I'm guessing it might be this year or next year sometime, once that happens, then of course all of our study materials will be updated as quickly as possible after that. It won't be like the next day, but within the coming weeks or maybe up to a month or so, everything will be updated as quickly as possible. Yes, SR Expert. Still have a checkout problem. Most developers don't like custom checkout. Welcome to the club. Absolutely. But I think a lot of it is because we don't understand how to modify the checkout, what it takes to do that. And I know in our expert developer course, we work through what it takes to create a gift card, module. And so there's a lot of different aspects that touch the checkout. And we go through that. And there's some pretty cool revelations, I think, that I had in creating that course. And that was pretty exciting. So we're going to now jump into what does it take to customize the shipment step of the of order management. So what is it? What does this mean here? There's a couple things that this could mean. Honestly, this is a pretty unclear question. In my preparation, I was taking the perspective of shipment step of placing an order, call it order management. But there's 2 ways we can take this. So I think the perspective I'm going to especially focus on here for the next couple of minutes is what does it take to customize the shipment step of placing an order, and that way order management, but also one can review what does it take to adjust how when you ship an order. Honestly, there's not much to that, and that's why I've kind of taken the approach of the checkout screen, because I know that's incredibly relevant. So and just to review what that would be, the order management screen would be when you come into an order and you have a list of the order items and the address and all of that stuff. You can click to ship it, and this would be technically the shipment step of order management. So you have our shipment step here. To be frank, there's not much into customizing this. You might want, if you were taking this incredibly literally, you might want to make sure you know where the templates are and what functionality is available in the templates and that sort of thing. But it's incredibly basic, and there's not much to know about this. So that's why I'm taking the different step of what does it take. Oops, I should close out of this. What does it take to modify the shipping methods area of placing an order? I think that's much more applicable to our conversation here today. So let's jump into this. And I think that, again, this is very relevant to all parties involved in watching this. So I've placed a product in my cart. I have filled out these fields. And basically my idea is, what would it take to add a extra explanatory message? Honestly, I do not like how the default Magento display of shipping methods is. We should have personally, I like to have it flipped around, flat rate and then fixed. And sometimes we even can take off, depending on what it is, we might even take off, combine or adjust how these are displayed in totality. Ultimately, I also have really liked, we built a module for a company a while back whereby we added some explanatory text, like what's flat rate and table best way and table rate, like, or flat rate. Like, how, the big question is, how long does it take in order for this package to get here? That's the only question people care about when they are looking to place this order and select the shipping method. How long does it take to get here, and how much does it cost? They really don't care whether it's FedEx or DHL and getting it there. They don't care. So we want to be able to do our best to explain that in this process. So let's take a look and see how we can do this. And this type of discovery is very important to your study processes in general. So let's open up Chrome Developer Tools. And we're going to see, okay, the question is, when are these displayed and how are they displayed? So I'm going to change my zip code here. I click out of it, and finally this appears. So we have an estimate shipping methods. And I already pre-built a little bit of this, so I'm going to accelerate our processes today. I don't want to waste you all's time. Okay, so we see estimate shipping methods. We see two carriers here, which matches up to here, and yeah, so it's all kind of available here. This is the information we want to modify. So the big question is, and this is incredibly pertinent to the taking our test, is how do we modify the values that are coming down here, right? This is super important. Can we add an extra message into this this object that has come down, and what object do we modify? Well, that's the big question. And you already see I've kind of given it away because I pre-built some of this. Extension attributes. This is the solution for extending information that comes down through the API. Now, don't get me wrong. You could override the interface. You could override the models implementing the interface, but it's way more intuitive to use extension attributes. We have complete control over it. It's upgrade proof, etc., etc. So keep that in mind. We never, unless absolutely 100% necessary, we never want to modify an interface or the models associated with it. We want to use extension attributes. So we're going to explore that here today just for a couple of minutes. The first question is, how do we know where to start with this? Like, what's the process here? And the way to do this is actually quite easy. Well, actually, before we do that, I wanted to quickly point something out. We could go through here if we wanted to trigger this web API request. We could go through and change this and wait, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 seconds, trigger another request. That does work. However, what might be better than that, or what is better than that, is, and this is a little trick here, so this is not specifically related to tests. Come into copy as curl, go over into Postman. Postman is your key to automating or speeding up your discovery of APIs. You can't see me click here, but I go into File, Import, Raw Text. I drop this in just exactly as it is. This is the request. I hit Continue, Import, and done. Now I can click Send, and I think there's actually a keyboard shortcut for that. I can click Send. I can get a response back that fast. Look how cool that is. So that's a little trick that I think will save you a lot of time here. In fact, actually, I think I'm going to put that into a 60 seconds. We'll save you 60 minutes in the next year. I got one coming out here soon. I'd love to come out with one of those every week because I really believe in productivity hacks that will save you time. So with this in mind, we're now triggering our web request very quickly and very easily. Let's hop over into Phpstorm. Well, first we need some information off of this. How do we find this in our Magento code base? Well, let's take the end of this. This looks like estimate shipping methods. Obviously, this is like a cart ID code, so that's not relevant. So let's come copy out our estimate shipping methods. come up into vendor. We're just going to search through the entire code base on this. All right, so it pulls up webapi.xml. In fact, if we wanted to filter this out, we can search for webapi.xml. And now we have several lists of this. So we have carts, cart ID, method post, method post. So these first two are not going to be relevant at all to us because if you remember, oh, actually, no, I'm wrong. This is post. I thought it was a get. I'm wrong. So post, all of these are post. Okay. So now we have, what's the path here? We have guest carts. Okay. So carts is none of these match. This one does match because it's guest carts. So let's come here. And this is where the Magento Phpstorm plugin is incredibly helpful. They just released version 1.3, I think. Let's see here. I forgot what it was. They just released, 3.2, excuse me. And so there's some cool new features and updates with it there. So 3.2 is just available. So anyways, we see here is our guest carts estimate shipping method. This is where this API request is defined. And all we have to do is come over to your estimate by extended address. I should have said I command click on this. Estimate shipping address. I think control click would work in Windows. I drop this down into guest. We have two implementations of this: shipping method management and guest shipping method management. If I was just to guess, it's probably going to be guest shipping method management because this one was guest carts. So we're going to come over here, drop a breakpoint here. And again, we're working through the process of, this is the study process. This is what I need every one of you to do in order to pass the test. I mean, this is what's critical because you have to understand how these processes work to be able to, again, the processes meaning Magento processes, how they work. Okay, so coming down to quote ID mask, we're going to step into this. And again, this is where this whole mastering X debug comes in. Personally, the F7 and F8 keys on my keyboard, I literally have my muscle memory, and that's what I use all day, every day is this F7 and F8 to step into each one of these methods here. All right, estimate by extended address. We're going to step in here. I'm going to work through the plugins real quick. Okay, actually, that plugin was mine. I think that's what I was the one that created that. Great. So estimate by extended address. We're going to drop into here. We're going to get the active quote. Get shipping methods. All right, so this is a great method for you to step through in general to understand how the shipping methods are calculated, how they are loaded in, collect shipping rates. We're not going to do that here today because don't have the time, but this is a great method. I would suggest writing this down. Step through this method to understand exactly how that all works. So we're going to come into shipping rates. Then we have our get output. We have two shipping rates. Now let's look at the output here. Data, carrier code. That actually looks pretty similar to what we were seeing in Postman. Oops, well, you can kind of see it here. All this information here. So that's pretty close. So I think we're on to something. I think we found the class to modify. So in doing this, though, let's see what type of output this is. We can come across this in one or two ways. And if you need more information about this, I'm kind of jumping over this pretty quick, but feel free to stop me, and I'm happy to get more information for you. So we can go jump to type source. You can't see this on my screen here, but it's in the context menu. Right-click down near the bottom, jump to type source. We have it's our shipping method. So shipping method class, which implements shipping method interface, which if you remember, let's jump. Shipping method management. I think this was guest shipping method. Nope, I'm getting confused here. Shipping method. Okay, here we go. So we see this is our interface to define what's going on in our to return the values to the front end for estimating shipping methods. We have our cart ID address interface, and now we have our shipping method interface. This is what is being returned. Our shipping method interface, so that's how this is associated. Our shipping estimation interface returns a shipping method interface. Coming to the shipping method interface, and again, we could override this. That is technically sort of possible, but in order to override it, we'd have to override This one, we'd have to change out the web API.xml. We'd have to implement or override the shipping method interface. It's a big mess that we'd have to do. We'd have to change a lot of files in order to do this. But if we're looking at our shipping method interface here, I'm going to come down to the bottom. We have Git Extension Attributes. Anytime you see this, this is a light bulb saying, I can modify this. I can return whatever information I want to return. We can do that. So the way we do that is with our extension attributes.xml. Right here. I built this out already. So I create an extension attributes for shipping method interface, shipping details, and I created myself a new shipping details interface. I created an implementation for that. Again, really basic stuff here. And then I created a DI.XML with a preference to map shipping details interface over to shipping details. These are the steps that it takes to do that. Now, that's great, except for the one fact that with extension attributes, we need to create a plugin or some type of mechanism to create those extension attributes. And that's what I do here. So with all that as the background, let's jump into my hydration tool to be able to generate our shipping, the details that will be shown on the front end. I'm going to stop this. And we will trigger it again. Okay. So I created an after plugin, after estimate by extended attribute, or by extended address. So estimate by extended address. It's the after for this. So we already have our. Let's look at our window here. We see results and 2 shipping method results. So let's go hydrate each one of those. So the one thing that's important to note with extension attributes is to say the extension attributes might not be there. That's very important to understand. So we need to instead either check to see if they're there. We get those if they're there, because otherwise, if some other module has already created them and added some values, if we were to just always use the extension attribute factory, then we might be overwriting values. So we're doing kind of an OR statement there. And we have our details. We're creating our own method, our own class that will be injected in there. Set time in transit message, set shipping details. We are now setting the shipping details on our extension attributes. We are now setting extension attributes on the shipping result. And the result is, it looks like that was triggered twice. The result is we now can access extension attributes.shippingdetails.time in transit message from our JavaScript. So we just override that template, add it in, and we are good to go. So that's honestly pretty easy, and that's a great way to manage or modify the shipping method step of placing an order. All right, Neha, what if we want to hide 1 to 2 shipping methods based off a specific attribute, value, and product? All right, that's a great question. So basically, the exact same process as we just defined is literally what you are going to do there. So, and yeah, so basically we have our shipping method management, estimate by extended address. We could create a after method, after plugin for this. We have our shipping methods. And then the one thing, I forgot to call out is in plugins. It's very important to remember that with an after plugin, these are the 2 primary pieces of information that we usually think of when working with an after plugin. We have our subject, the class that we're modifying the output of, and we also have the result, the information that was passed, that was generated in the original method and passed to this. But I have these 2 methods here, these 2 parameters here. These are also available. We have cart ID and address. Cart ID and address. Now, these are passed in because ultimately they are used in our shipping estimation. I'm going to jump around here. They're used here to load in the quote. So what we can do is, if we're wanting to do that, we can load in the quote based off this exact code. We literally copy it over into here. And actually, let me just do that real quick. show you how that's done. Hydrate shipping details. We could do this if we had quote repository here, get active, quote get all items. Or the other way we can do that is we could get the active, and actually the better way to do it is and then inject an item repository. So it would be repository interface. Come on. I don't want an interceptor. Oh, cart repository interface. Okay. Cart repository, cart item repository interface. Initialize those properties. Okay. And cart repository. And by the way, this is the API friendly way. So we could call, so we have a quote, and we can type into this out, and we could say quote get all items. But technically, that is not available if I did not type into this out. Let's see here. Get items is only available, and for some reason, that's not built out very well in Magento. I don't understand why that is. So we would say quote items equals this quote cart item repository get list, and then we have quote get ID. Now we have the quote items, and we can do for each quote items as quote item, and we can say quote item get product. Let's see here. Product type. That's weird. Okay, well, for some reason, the product ID is not in here, which I find is incredibly weird. Quote ID quantity. That is ridiculous. It's not part of the API. Okay, that's ridiculous. I would still call product get product ID anyways. Don't call get product. And again, if we want to keep this API consistent with the API, then we would have to fetch these attributes. And one little suggestion here, don't load the products from product repository. Never, ever, ever do that unless absolutely 100% necessary. I have seen so many times where there is horrible performance, and it's because the developer used the product repository to load the product to get one or two attributes. How do you load one or two attributes? And this might actually be also on the test. The way you do this is not through loading in the product via the product repository. The way you do that is through the product's resource model. Let's see here, product resource. I'm going to replace product resource. Well, let's initialize this. Initialize properties. Okay. Product ID. And then actually, well, yeah. So then we can do this. Product resource, get raw, attribute raw value. Entity ID is product ID. Whatever the attribute would be, let's just say price and store 0, but we can change that to be applicable. Actually, we would change this to be quote, get store ID. Done. In this case, we are getting the raw attribute value for the price, whatever attribute you want. And it's very, very performant. It's 1 or 2 SQL queries as opposed to the bazillion SQL queries that is loaded in, that loads the product repository in. This is how you do it, my friends. The other option would be to create a product collection and load in, set the specific attributes that you want to load in as well, and then you call get first item. That would also work. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. What if we want to hide based off a specific catalog rule applied on product, and if such, product in, yep. So I basically gave you the same idea there. I think you can call, I don't know, on the quote, let's see here, get, I'm not seeing a way to check on that. So you'd have to experiment around. I don't know off the top of my head to see the applied rules there. I'm sure there's a way to do that. Simon asked, what's the masked ID property of the quote? Great question, Simon. Let's jump into that. Let's see here. Shipping method interface. And actually, the way we can do this is guest shipping management masked ID, which you see used right there. Oops, I need to load up Postman. Let's trigger the request again. Okay, what's the masked ID? This we can see in, actually, let me go back to Postman. It is right here. Obviously, this is for guest carts. So in other words, the web API is, well, technically API should be stateless, technically speaking. We can use cookies in it, and that would be, that it is kind of, that is now allowed. I think in some of the previous editions, that was somewhat broken of Magento, like maybe even as of 2.3.1 or 2, something like that. It was still broken for a while. But now we can use sessions. Is that the best design? Maybe not. So that's where Magento is going here. They say, okay, what's the guest cart ID? And that's obviously the masked ID. And it's kind of like the password for this cart, because ultimately we could access, if we knew the cart ID for other carts, we could technically load up that cart's information, per my understanding. So the quote ID mask factory, and we load that quote ID mask, which comes in with this information: data, entity ID, quote ID, and masked ID. Now, the question is, where is this? What table is this stored in? We can probably go and search for mask. Jump to type source. Let's construct. Here is our resource model. Let's jump over here. This will tell us the table name, quote ID mask. And I realized I did not pull up my database. Let's see here. Associate 2. There we go. Bingo. Okay, let's search for mask. Quote ID mask. We got it right there. So it's basically kind of a client ID, but it's how is a client ID, or call it a password, is associated with the quote itself. So that's how it's loaded. And we'll notice here, for every method, there is always pretty much a, so we have guest carts and we have carts. So if we search for estimate shipping methods, we have for carts and cart ID. So this is for I think the logged in customers, and then we have the guest for the not logged in. So hopefully that clears that up. Excellent. As you can see, we can go down big rabbit holes with this. It's just how it works. So anyways, I hope this provided you a good starting place to understand how to customize a shipment step of the order management. Nia had a great question. And that question is, what if we want to hide shipping methods based off of product attribute values, or based off of cart price or catalog rules? So either one of those is great to work with and be able to understand exactly what's going on. You've got to have this curiosity. So great questions, and then take those questions to fruition in that curiosity. Dive in, understand it. So I wish we had time to go through all permutations and all possibilities, but we don't. So we're just gonna have to work through this. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. There is a good one. You are tasked now, and I should note that was the delineating line. That previous question that we talked about for literally 20 minutes was for the professional developer test. That was a good thing to look at for both, but now we are going to be getting into areas that is specifically pertinent to expert developer. This stuff is probably not going to be found at all on the other test, on the professional developer test. So, okay, one other question here. What if we want to add a free gift product with some specific products? Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to get into that, but that is a great question. There are modules out there to do that. If this is related to client requirements, I would definitely recommend a module to do that. But at the same point, it's a really great exercise to dig in and do that yourself. So actually, it will, as I'm thinking about it, it will have something to do with calculating a custom price for a product. Okay, so let's jump into this. You are tasked with calculating a custom price for a product. Now, one thing to note is you can always do a Google search and see how to add a custom price for a product. That works, but I think there's a better way. And the question is then, how do we do this? There's a number of, well, actually, there's a lot of this stuff that is coming together. Calculating a custom price or setting a custom price can happen at any time in this process, but I would say that it's going to happen around the time, or usually would happen around the time that we calculate the totals for the quote. Because obviously we have a product that is added to the cart, or a product that is in the cart. At some point, that row total needs to be calculated. At some point, the subtotal needs to be calculated, the tax, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this kind of ends up coming together. This is another question, and I hope you take the time to write down these questions. Calculating a custom price for a product. If we don't have time to dig into this fully, do it yourself. Experiment with it, understand how it works. You need to track every time a product is added to the cart. Where do you ensure this happens? This is really important to understand as well. And I wrote down this list here. Take a moment to, I'll sit on this screen for a second. These are all the places that I'm aware of where products can be added to the cart. And it's really easy to miss this, like super easy to miss this. We can think of, well, we just add it to the cart, product to the cart, on the product page and on the admin or order page. Yeah, that works. But that's not all. We have the API, we have reorder and merge quotes as well. So yeah, actually, and when, to be clear, merging quotes happens when a customer has added, well, a visitor has added items to their cart and they go log in. At the moment they log in, their quotes are merged. The quote that was associated with a customer, as well as the quote with their current cart, those are merged, and then we have the merge quote operation in which products are added to the cart. All right, so I just wanted to, these are the two ones we're going to talk about now. Tracking every time a product is added to the cart, as well as tasked with calculating a custom price for a product. So let's see, how do we find out when what code is triggered when a product is added to the cart? So I'm going to come down into small, blue for this Ajax full zip sweatshirt. You can think a developer is involved in creating this. All right, so add to cart. So let's stop this process. Oops, we're going to see what was the URL for this. Checkout, cart, add, and then we have some values. Checkout, cart, add. 3 slashes in this, or actually 2 slashes, 3 paths at the beginning here before we get U, E, and C. That means that it's a Magento controller. So Magento controller, if I was to make a guess, just hazard a guess. Well, actually, no, let me back up on that. We don't want to guess. We want to use logic and understand how this works. I'm going to search for checkout in routes.xml. And it's going to take me exactly to where I need to go. This is our module checkout directory. I'm going to double click on the checkout module, come down to controller, checkout. So that's checkout is basically to this point, cart, add.php, we're there. That's how easy it was to find this. Execute. Let's run this again. Add a medium to the cart this time. Whoopsie. We'll have to refresh this page. And again, if you all have questions to what I'm talking about, I am going a little bit quicker than normal today. It's because I really want to get some of this stuff talked about. But yeah, feel free to stop me. It's always good to chat through what we're talking about here. That's the thing. It's just hard to know what to talk about, and because there's so much to talk about, and I'm trying to focus on the little bit more difficult topics, or at least little more difficult jumping off places, simply because I want to give you the tools in order to continue your discovery. Again, I want to see you pass this test, and that's why I'm coming back here to continue extra education as we approach our deadline of the end of May. So end of May is where whoopsie, I wonder if I have, I do, whoops, great. End of May is when we have our deadline for this. So just make sure you're strategic about it, because I don't want to be, oh, what are we doing here? Come on. I want to make sure everybody has equal opportunity to get certified, so they can have a chance to win the Apple Watch, as well as one of the Apple Watches, as well as get a free t-shirt. And everybody else will have the opportunity to get a really cool t-shirt as well. Okay, oopsie, here we go, jump back here. Let's add to cart. You did not want to hear me sneeze. There we go. All right, so we've triggered our add to cart. And again, just wanted to call out here, Xdebug is literally what I always use. As I say, well, as somebody else coined the term, building or writing, debugging code without Xdebug is literally like trying to build a house without your hands. I'm sure it's possible, but boy, would it be difficult. All right, so we're going to step through this. None of this is that pertinent until we get to right here. This cart add product. So what is this cart? What type is that? We have this cart, checkout model cart. Okay, I think that's actually deprecated. One. All right, deprecated class, if I remember right. Yep, deprecated. So, okay. So add products. So in other words, don't use this if you're adding products to the cart yourself. All right, so we're getting the quantity request, dispatch, checkout, cart, product, add before. All right, so one thing to note is with these events that are triggered or you creating plugins, make sure that it is used pretty well universally. So I noted that here at the top here, this is a deprecated class. It says use Magento quote model quote instead. So if you were to use this, we're probably not going to be capturing all use cases because other places in Magento are now going to be starting to just directly use the model quote. So that means the value of this event or creating a plugin for this method is greatly diminished. All right, now we see this get quote add product. Great. Add product, jumping in here. All right, so again, what we're doing is seeing where are products added to the cart. How do we track every time a product is added to the cart, as well as calculating a custom price for a product. And again, these are very well intertwined because we might want to set the custom price for a product that is added to the cart somewhere in the add to cart phase, which again then ties back into creating a event log for every time a product is added to the cart. All right, so we're going to step down here. If product is saleable, cart candidates. All right, prepare for cart advanced. So we're going to look at exactly how products are added to the cart, kind of do a review of that. But I'm seeing right here, this add product might be a place, this is seemingly possible or plausible, this add product would be a place that we might be able to start creating functionality for because this is directly on the quote itself. And if we scroll down here just a little bit, we can look at, but I do see this add item. Now that might be the final and official place that we would use. So, yeah. We'll see. Let's just dive into this a little bit more. Okay, get type instance, prepare for cart advanced. This prepare product, let's step through this here, see what's going on. Attributes, by request to get super attributes. And looks like this is for adding a configurable product to the cart. You will notice that our type is a configurable type. And so we are using the product type configurable setup here. And it's very important to understand exactly how configurable products work. And just really quickly, I've done a lot of work with them lately, so I feel like I'm a little more familiar with them than I normally am. Catalog product Superlink is where the configurable product to their parents are associated. They are in this table here. We have product ID and we have parent ID. So, and feel free to create your own resource model to say, hey, what is the parent product for this, or get all children for this given product. So you can create a resource model to reference them back and forth, and that's really powerful and because it's really fast. I love fast because then you can load in everything later. This, and I know I'm taking a brief diversion here, but I think it's important enough to do this. There is a method called get used product collection, which you can also use. It's not wrong to use this, but if all you need is product IDs to work with, why use this? Because you're actually loading in products. From a performance perspective, it's much faster to go directly to the database and get the list of IDs you want. I am completely off track here, but I want to also throw something else out there that will save you a lot of time. in Magento Commerce. So this is not in open source, but in Magento Commerce, parent ID is not the ID of the entity. It's not the entity ID. It's the row ID. And so this is kind of going back to the master architect test. But I'll just throw this out there because it's important to miss. It's easy to miss. So in Commerce, there's an extra column in here called row ID. So there's entity ID and row ID. Row ID is actually the primary key for this catalog product entity table just in Magento Commerce. And the reason they do it is for staging purposes. So it allows you to have basically multiple versions of this entity ID. And so the Superlink references the row ID, not the entity ID. And there is a method in those resource models to get the entity ID, or the primary key column, and you would want to use that instead. All right, so that was a diversion, but we're back. We're back on track here. So we have our attributes. So basically, I think what we're going to do is we have a parent product, and we need to find the simple product that is associated with it. Because if you look in the database, and this is the sample data is a great one to look at. Item. We have a configurable product. We still have order ID. Oh, 1, 2. That's odd. Actually, I don't think they did that correctly. Normally, there's 2 products. There is a configurable product and there's a simple product that is associated with it. But that's not the case here. So, oh well. All right, so we're going to step through this really quickly. Oops. Result parent product. Okay, yeah. All right, let's. Okay, if is array result. Yes, we have a product. I think this will be the parent product. Data. Yep, parent ID is configurable. Is array result. Step in here, configurable attributes. And basically narrowing it down, narrowing all the list of children down to just the one that has the matching attributes. Get product by attributes. So yeah, and this is actually where it's happening. This is where it's narrowing it down. Based off the attributes, add custom options. It's populating the information associated with this child simple product. And we'll skip through this, but it's great if you want to take a few minutes to understand exactly how this works. So our result products, it comes back with 2 products to add to the cart. So that's another issue that one can run into is you're actually dealing with multiple products in at least some cases. So we want to keep that in mind. So we have our cart candidates. We have 2 candidates to add to the cart. Cart candidates, we're going to step through this really quickly. It's creating the items. Oh, and actually that's the one other thing. Yes, representing products. You know what? We're going to look at this here in just a minute. I'm going to skip past this right now because I want to keep on track. Okay, so this is how, again, stepping through this. Get item by product. We're going to force run the cursor. And item processor, we're initializing the cart items. To this point, we've been working with products, but now we have a quote item or cart item that has been created. Item processor prepare. Go through both of these. Oops. Okay, great. I have breakpoints set there just because I wanted to review them. We're going to force run the cursor again. Okay, step through this. Items. Set parent item. Okay. Now, one thing to note is out of this method, if we're wanting to create an after plugin or after method, we are not going to get all of our items out of this because we just get parent item. And the problem is parent item is not all that's been added to the cart. So we have to come up with a creative method in order to do that. One way to do that, we could, we have a items event that is being triggered. That would work possibly as well. So in this case, and actually usually plugins are better, but in this case, an event is better if we need to get access to all items that have been added to the cart. Otherwise, we could always find the parent item and then the child item inside a quote, which, keep in mind, at this point, another important thing to understand is that the quote has not been saved yet. So we have no item ID in here. There is no parent item ID that has been specified either. So yes, that is a little tricky, and I worked through that fairly recently. I don't remember the solution I came up with, but there's a number of ways to work through that. Okay, so the questions we have in front of us is track every time a product is added to the cart. Where did you ensure this happens, as well as calculating custom price? So every time a product is added to the cart, I think the closest place that we could get to that is add product. We either do a plugin for add product, or this add item. This is probably the closest. I'm not aware of any other area that is more, call it intimately connected to the item being added to the cart. So this is where it happens, and you can do search through the quote item, search through the database or through the code base, but this is literally the closest place to where it is added. We see get items to collection, add item. That is literally where it happens. So yeah. Okay, let's keep stepping through this, because there's one more very important method I want to discuss. It doesn't look like it's being triggered here. Let's just make sure. Bless my wife's heart, she needed some help dealing with the kids. And well, let me just put it this way. They're supposed to be asleep until 9 o'clock. And they have a habit of waking up a bit early. And so I'm usually the one that helps deal with them and make sure that they're entertained properly. But this morning they wake up a little bit earlier than they should. So I'm kind of stuck here in the live stream dealing with this. So bless her heart, she's having to deal with that. That's good. Oh, that's okay. She's a very good woman. All right, let's come in here to our save, because this is, I think, where we're going to want to talk about this. Yes. Okay. Yeah, this is what I was hoping to talk about. So it's triggered in here. So we just added the item to the cart, and we have a couple more things to talk about. First, collecting totals and the custom price. That's what we're going to deal with now. How would we set a custom price in this process? Now, one way we can do this is if we were to come down to quote. Where is that? Yep. We can search for custom price in here. We will uncheck our routes.xml, and we can we see here Magento quote item, set custom price, set calculation price, set base calculation price, set data. And that would be a very good starting point and a very good clue on that. However, I will say, and I wrote this down for my reference, there can be a bit of a challenge with this. So the custom price is, I'm just double checking here. Yeah, so we have, whoopsie. So we have custom price, but one thing to remember back here on abstract item, custom price, let's see here. Set custom price. There is actually, it's deceptive because we need to set original custom price. All right. We can search for this, but I think there is actually another place that we have to set this. And I'm going to call this out for your reference. Set custom price. I don't want tests here. It's actually also set original custom price. Set original custom price. Okay, this is where it's a gotcha. Set original custom price or get original custom price is used all over the place. But there is no method for it, even though there is a method for set custom price. So keep that in mind as you're working through this. If you need to set a custom price for a product, whether it's $0, whatever it is, you need to call both of these methods set original custom price as well as set custom price. Otherwise, it will not work. So I save you some grief and pain in trying to figure that out, because I spent, I don't know, a couple hours trying to figure it out. I was like, wow, that's not intuitive. So anyways, let's step through and get a brief understanding of collecting totals, because this is incredibly critical to understanding in order to pass the expert test. This is providing jump-off points. There is much more that we need to know and understand in order to pass the test. Just watching a few 5 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes of discussing this is not enough to pass the test, just to be very clear on that. All right, so this totals collector collect. Okay, I see places that for hooking into this, and personally, I would not use, or I would not call, well, let me back up. I would assign a custom price before collecting the totals, not when adding the product. Just in case there is something that would override this, something that would not get saved properly, I would do it before collecting totals. However, I would verify or check to make sure or see if this has already been set. In an application I've built recently, again, performance is a huge deal for me. It's a huge deal. So what I did was I actually created a cache key for the custom price to verify whether or not I needed to update it or not. Otherwise, it's a slightly expensive operation, and the total collector can be called enough times that we can start bogging down the application if we recollect the custom price or recalculate the custom price too frequently. So we want to do that at bare minimum, but it's the closest to collecting the totals or setting the row total in the in this total collector. So I would suggest setting the custom price there, but not at the add product area, but we still want to keep performance very much in mind. All right, so we have our total. We have an event we can trigger. We can work with here, collect item quantities. Quote, get all addresses. Don't think that's where we want collect address totals. All right, so we notice it's a shipping assignment factory, which seems to have set shipping method and the address, and the item. So when we create a total collector ourselves, if we want to create, say, a discount or a fee structure, that we would do that in the total collector. And we have available to us, we have the items, we have the shipping method, and the shipping address. That's pretty much all that we need, although there is ways to get the quote if needed, but we want to do that very carefully. Set items. All right, so we have our total factory. And this is, I think, basically what collects the totals. And we have our collector list. Get collector. This is kind of wonky how these are loaded up. But again, this is very important to our understanding of how these are totaled or how these are configured, simply because how do I say this? The sort order for totals is incredibly important. For example, in some places, tax is calculated after shipping. In some places, tax is calculated before shipping. So that's a great example of why the sort order is very important and needs to be customizable. All right, so get collectors, get total collector, get totals. Oh, that was already collected, but I don't think we need this because I was just creating the total collector. Collectors. Oops, that was already built. All right. So I guess I will just point this out to you for further study. We have an init model instance. Let's see here. Prepare configure array. Yes. So this collector here, and I'm going to copy this path. Actually, let me just do it this way. I'm going to drop it in the comments for you all here. That is very important, and I suggest you take a deep dive through how those quote totals are initialized. All right, collector, collect. Here's a subtotal collector. And this is the parent is not important, but in order to create a total collector, you will want to implement or extend the abstract total class. And this is pretty much the process. So we have our address, shipping, we're getting our items, initialize item, whoopsie. Oh, here's another important thing to remember. That's right. So this address right here, I believe, and I think this is on the test here, so I'm glad this came up. This is why it's important to dive into this stuff here. Okay, the address type of billing, what items are associated with that? Nothing. Absolutely zero, nothing items. So that is very important to remember, that no items are associated with the billing address. So it is all associated with the shipping address. So I am going to set a breakpoint here, and I am going to run it again to this place. And let's check and see on our shipping assignment. Data, shipping. There's probably a faster way to get this. Address. Oops. Items. Items still 0. Okay, I didn't think it had. Yeah, it would take a couple seconds to work through that. Whoopsie. Okay, well, looks like that broke. Yes, so for some reason that did not calculate as I was hoping it would. So let's just refresh this. Are all virtual items still associated with the shipping address? That is a great question. I do not know that off the top of my head. I believe that, yes, they are still associated with the shipping address, but I am not 100% sure. I'm going to add this item to the cart. All right, so I think next week, we might be diving back into more checkout stuff. Again, it's so important. I think we got a lot of good stuff covered today. I think I need to wrap it up, the live stream up now. But this was hopefully a good jumping off point. We're going to talk a little bit more about total collectors next week, and then we'll talk about represent products as well as the whole order placement process in general. So any final questions before we close this up for today? It's been great having you all apart. I appreciate the questions. Oops, I missed a question here just a minute ago from Neha. Sometimes we face issues with collect total function when multiple plugins like store credit, gift card used together, as all of these extensions are used in the collect total function. Yep, I get it. How do I say this? Modules usually do not play nicely together. It's just how it works. So it's unfortunate, but it is the reality of how that works. They do not play nicely together. Excellent. Well, looks like I don't have any other questions coming in at the moment. So yeah, we will be back together next Saturday, and I'm thinking that might be our last study group live stream. However, it won't be the last you're going to see me this year, because my goal is to do at least one get together every month. And in fact, it's also, I'm really excited. We ordered a whole bunch more video equipment, because me and my brother Jesse, he's pretty much manages the agency development side of what we do. Basically working for merchants, and we're going to be starting. So I've been doing Smash the Bug. We have a whole bunch of 4 or 5 episodes of that recorded, but we're going to start a podcast. Well, we're going to continue the podcast, but he and I together, just talking about e-commerce development. We got a lot of stories, and I think you're going to find a lot of those stories very relatable, and a lot of the challenges we've worked through, we've fought through, as well as talking about some really important things like burnout. How do you work with that? And I work enough. It's something I fight quite often because there's, I'm putting in 50, 60 hour weeks. So how does one deal with that? How does one work through that? So I think there's going to be a lot of value there. And so and I'm sure we'll be doing some live streams on that as well. So anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you here today. Don't miss next week. We're going to be diving back into more checkout stuff. Again, the most difficult parts of the Magento tests, because I want to get you all prepared for that. Rogue, one last question. Great. What would you say if there are multiple observer files or single for a product module when we customize things? I guess I'm not following that question, Neha, because one thing to say is it is never a problem to have multiple observers or multiple plugins for a method. That is actually a good thing. If I see people cramming in a whole bunch of different ideas into an observer, that means that it's going to be difficult to follow. In fact, if you'll notice, I don't know if you caught this here, when we were adding in our shipping details to the shipping estimate API method, my plugin is hydrate shipping details, and that's matches my shipping details interface, my shipping details model, hydrate shipping details, and I could actually probably well, actually, I'm going to just do this. Hydrate shipping details into estimate response. This is a very good naming convention, and I'm going to drop back into here. One thing to note is if you refactor or change the name of a class, it completely screws up your references in the IXML. So you want to come back here. And this is literally how I like to name stuff. It's easy to understand. It's verbose. Yes, it is. But with type hinting, verbosity doesn't really matter. And I can even use aliases too to shrink stuff down. And you'll notice I did that here. Oops. Wow. I got to reformat this here. I liked, oopsie, I guess I did not do that. I thought I was going to do that. Replace with alias. Shipping method extension factory. I always like to get rid of interface out of there. Oops. Replace with alias, shipping details factory. So that cleans things up quite a lot. But anyways, yes, this says exactly what it does. So if I needed to do something else, I just create another plugin. The overhead is incredibly minimal at that case. In that case, I create another plugin and I do that. It makes it a lot easier. Whoop. Thank you. You're not seeing what I'm doing. Okay. Appreciate that. Yes. Okay. So what I was doing here is so shipping details. I keep that consistent. So I have shipping details and API data, shipping details interface. I have a shipping details model. I have hydrate shipping details, and the class name was just previously hydrate shipping details. But what you couldn't see while I was working on that was I changed this out to hydrate shipping details into estimate response. That's verbose. Yes, it is. But it is very clear to see exactly what's going on. There is no ambiguity in this. I also always name the plugin. The plugin name is always the final class name for me. This is the way I do it for what this is. Because, again, the name is honestly pretty worthless. It's used if you need to change the sort order or disable another plugin. But just use that as the type name. But that said, the one other thing that you did not see is I used Shift F6. I changed the name of the class, which changes the name of the file, changes the file name. And then Phpstorm completely screws it up, and it comes in like this. So you have to recopy the class name in here and call it a day. So that makes it pretty easily. Oopsie, I don't know why it says there's no. It's odd. Well, that's why, because I did that. All right, so be verbose in your naming. Verbosity then allows specificity. Because I'm not going to try to cram in a whole bunch of other stuff into this. Well, I guess I kind of started doing that when we were answering that question earlier, but that's okay. Verbosity means specificity. Specificity, and keep this in mind, makes it easier to do testing. Whether it's unit testing, integration testing, specificities are key to writing effective tests. And so I actually hope to be able to build out some information about that in the future, about what does it take to overcome this huge learning curve for testing? And that is overcome based off of the code that you write today. So keep that in mind. Magento to REST API does not support patch method. I don't know. I do not know that off the top of my head. I don't think so. Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure being with you all here today. I wish you the best as you continue your study, and I will look forward to, as we talk next week, we're going to dive into, again, more checkout stuff. Super incredibly important, and it's not something that many of us like to just study on our own, because it is complex. It's the most complex part of the Magento system, so we got to dive into that. That means if it's complex, we got to get into it. Very good. I wish you the best, and look forward to chatting next week, so take care.